Welcome back to Natural 2, our D&D and tabletop role-playing podcast and talk show. I am Nathan. My co-host, as always, is the lovely James, and today we are discussing, I guess, more or less the Druid class, but maybe more specifically the Moon Druid class in 5e, the various adjustments that 1D&D are kind of throwing out there and the community's reaction to it, and I guess our general take on what we think of the class and where it's at. I certainly have my opinions, but do you have any to kick us off, James?
So just to kind of set the tone, in my first D&D group ever, which was in 3.5 days, um, the DM outright banned druids. Nobody could play a druid, because they were too good in his opinion. So I never played or even opened the book on the druid in that edition, but in fifth, it kind of sounds like that torch has continued to be passed, and the druid is still a total Chad. Uh, so I still haven't played a druid. Um, I the flavor of the class has never been my favorite. Like it hasn't been appealing enough to me to edge out something else that I've already planned to play, but uh I have admired players at tables who can play one well.
Hmm. I think the Druid class suffers the most from mechanical justifications and theme or flavor justifications, because in 5e, this is kind of a problem across 5e as a whole. There are so many options and additions and additional content and third-party content, and just like there's so many subclasses and variety to every single option that you can take that Druid is now a really broad spectrum of things you can choose, even though the Moon Druid is certainly, I guess, more or less the prime pick for most individuals. Where I find it frustrating, because all this is from a DM's perspective, because I haven't really been a player enough to have the experience of playing different classes, and when I do play, the Druid is the last thing on my mind. It is frustrating to read the flavor text, I guess, in the source books and across the internet of what a druid is supposed to be, and then seeing it play out at the actual table. Because so often when you ask a player, what does that look like, or how does your character feel about this, or what is the justification of like why you are here and what you're doing, it I have found that it is usually weaker in druids because they have a lot of different options at their disposal that they don't want to get rid of for like theme's sake. Like a lot of people want to transform into an animal they never would have seen before, or transform into an animal that doesn't fit the setting at all, but it has the best stat block. And there's a lot of those like lures that make the player a lot more of a tool than a character, and all that stuff kind of drives me crazy. So that's my biggest issue with the druid and where it's at now. And I think 1D&D, or at least what we've seen so far, is kind of pulling it back in the right direction, but I think it's probably going to be changed because the community doesn't seem too pleased about losing their favorite class.
Yeah, that might be a warm take you have there. I have not seen yours is the first positive word I've seen about the 1D&D playtest druid. Um, and I get it. I again, I don't feel like kind of feel like I don't have a dog in this fight because the
Mhm.
druid is not in my top three, class choices. But I look at it as sort of kind of a mirror image of a wizard is how I sort of think about it. And in the way that when we're talking specifically about wild shape, I know
Mhm.
druid has a whole spell list that is also potentially worthy of discussion, but just wild shape itself um, can be thought of as part of your spell list.
Mhm.
Uh, wild shaping into a spider is the same as a wizard casting spider climb on himself, or it's analogous, let's say. Um, so I think of those shapes as being spells in and of themselves. Um, and so the playtest seems to be taking a spell list, if you will, that is as big as the monster manual and burning it and slashing it down to 3.
Hmm.
So I can understand being disappointed in that. I think that they're they're doing something very similar, in my opinion, to what they did with the redo of the Ranger, where the Beast Companion of a Beastmaster Ranger has like, oh, how did they put it? Like an Earth Beast and a Water
Hmm.
Beast and an Air Beast, and it just looks however you want it to look. And now the Druid is going to be the same thing with the wild shape, and it's
Hmm.
just, however you can say you look whatever you want to look like, but here's the stat block every single time. So I get that frustration. I don't think they're going to end up keeping that, or that's going to be often house ruled away. But um,
Well, I think my biggest pro for that argument, and the reason I kind of like it, is so often I see Wild Shape be like, I'm a direwolf or I'm a bear, whatever, best case scenario stat block is the one that people go to, and they just don't use anything else. So if you now make it flat across the board and every animal or shape is the same stats, then you're going to see a lot more variety. You can have a lot more character and personality in the things that you transfer into because right now it is what is the best thing for the situation? I'm that. What is the most powerful stat block? I'm that. And there isn't any sort of deeper thought towards that unless the player actively hinders himself, which I have found it very rare that a player will shoot themselves in the foot. They're not likely to do that in my experience.
no matter how much you might admire it, um, I I think that the druid may be uniquely susceptible to that, but that's not unique to the druid. I mean, I would feel the same way about a wizard that has all these spells to choose from and just cast the same 3 over and over again.
Hmm.
Every combat is fireball, you know, and that no matter who's in the way, no matter like an evocation wizard, that's what that is
Hmm.
as well. Or and don't even talk about sorcerers and warlocks, right?
Hmm.
Like um every every class has the it's I think it's a player problem. Problem exists between chair and D&D table, as far as getting into a rut.
Hmm.
Um if I were playing a druid, I would sort of have a deck of creatures, um and really be trying to mix it up. But uh just to extend my wizard comparison, I think that another way to solve this is, if you think about wild shapes like spells, how a wizard has to find a spell and then scribe it.
Hmm.
You could tell your druid, like, you've never seen a giant ape, you cannot become a giant ape.
Hmm.
And then if he's been a good boy, then he finds in a castle basement that they have sacked a a book where someone saw a giant ape and wrote all about it and drew
Hmm.
sketches, and now it's like, you found the giant ape spell and you can become a giant ape now if you want to.
I do like that kind of gatekeeping that the game allows, but from what I've seen in the very small experience that I have with this stuff, like the wizard not knowing the spell or a druid not knowing a shape, it is prime for the player to be like, oh, well, my character during his early years, he's like 400 years old. How has he not seen XYZ, right? Or, oh, well, if I just want to turn into it, all I need to see is the shape, so I'll just look in a book or something. Like, they want to instantly work around it because it seems like a hurdle that's being placed in front of them for no real reason or something that they can easily explain away. And so while I appreciate it being included, I've never actually seen it effectively translate without the player feeling like they're being targeted in some way because they're not being given the toy that they requested. Uh, I think overall, like there is across every class in 5e, there is the like, oh, this is the best for each class. You can look at builds and all that kind of stuff. I think the reason that it's more problematic or at least more prominent with the druid is because it is an incredible multi-tool when it comes to like a group's makeup or solving different scenarios that come up because they I think one of the bigger focuses of the one D&D shift is you can no longer just be really tiny creatures or insects or things of that nature starting off, so you're not immediately ruining the rogue's scouting ability and whole purpose. You can't be like flying and swimming creatures, so you can't just like avoid large swaths of problems and that kind of thing. Like they're trying to pull back a lot of the freedom and agency they gave it initially, and that's always going to make people feel like they're having things taken away from them because I guess they are. But I don't think Druid fans, I guess is what I should call them, are aware of just how unfun it is to have a character that has an answer to everything and has a form for everything and, did a dip into this because they can now transfer into a bear and then add it to their whatever. And it it's cool to theorize about, but when you actually sit down and play it at a table, you're beginning to step on the toes of the other players, and that's something that when I see it occurring, it's really frustrating. I find it hard to convey without sounding like I'm just like nagging and complaining. So that's another kind of reason I think the direction they're trying to go in is a bit better because it's easier to rein in a lot of that behavior, but we'll see if that sticks.
I wonder if this is just off the top of my head. So there's probably an obvious design issue with this that I am not thinking of. And if you know what that is, put it in the comments below. And like and subscribe while you're there.
Plug right in the middle.
So you gotta mix it up, you know. You
Mhm.
gotta say, ooh, over here, and then pow. Rope a dope. No, I wonder if there's a place halfway where instead of a druid having access to the entire monster manual, nor having just these three shapes to choose from, stat blocks, whatever. If if there were if it were like a class feature or even a whole subclass where instead of being the wild shape druid, you are the features of the night shaping druid,
You're
or
Ant-Man.
yeah, like I specialize in insects, or I
Mhm.
specialize in small stealthy animals, or I specialize in big burly animals. Like um give it a sphere, give it a focus, but within that focus you can still pick and choose different things.
Yeah, I mean, you hit
Um
on basically what I think is the best thing for the class is getting a better definition of what each subclass is, because the Moon Druid feels almost exactly the same as a lot of the other druids, just with a really enhanced wild shape. And so that's what I would almost wish for is like if you are the wild shape subclass of the druid, then maybe you should have no or very limited spells outside of that, or there should be some other thing that you have to like trade or focus on, and the other druids should have a lot more variety in the things they specialize in and maybe not have wild shape at all. Like that's something that I find frustrating about the class is like every druid is a druid even though they're not a druid, but they are a druid, and it's incredibly confusing.
I wonder if there's a way that they could sort of lean into, like, instead of just being a magical nature wizard that
Hmm.
that can change into any animal that he or she wants, if there's a way to sort of reflavor it, take it in a slightly different direction where it's a little more like this character is so in tune with nature and is so in tune with the natural world and those forces that it's a kind of like voluntary natural um gluten-free lycanthropy,
Hmm.
where um it's not a curse like where animalism,
Hmm.
um but it's a transformation that is again, focused. Because if you think about going more in the direction of the were beasts, they don't change into anything. They change into a were bear
Mhm.
or a were wolf or a were tiger, whatever. Um, so if we take it to that scale, like to that side of the scale, to that end of things, how would that feel?
I would
Like I
certainly enjoy having like a beast shape beast transformer class separate from the druid and leaving the druid as the more like in tune animal ally, nature ally caster, while there is the like beefy boy who can transmute into whatever he wants. Like I think you could separate the two and that would work really well.
and even have like I'm I'm a were cat druid and I have a sneaky form, which is a house cat, and I have a fighting form, which is a lion, and I
Hmm.
have a utility form, which is a leopard or something. I
Hmm.
don't know. Just spitballing, throwing stuff at the wall here.
Hmm.
Um, Frankly, it doesn't feel uh less thoughtful than what they put in the playtest.
Hmm.
So, uh, there's my hot take for the episode.
I think the biggest thing that I enjoyed about the playtest, because I think overall I would prefer that over what we have now, though I'm sure there are issues with it currently. I hate, absolutely hate. This is the one thing that I've never ever gotten behind with druids is that their wild shapes have a separate HP pool from their own. Because in my understanding, from reading what's in the book and visualizing what is being told to me, they are warping into an animal. They are not summoning another animal and then becoming them. They are not literally transforming into an animal that did not exist prior. They are molding their shape into a different form because they still have all the stats except for, strength and dex and that kind of stuff. So it's still them in there. It's very clear what this transaction is, but somehow they now have all the health of a bear or a lion or a direwolf, and it's never made sense to me. And that one small ruling allows druids to be these incredible tanks when I don't think the class was ever built for that. And if it was supposed to be that way with like the moon druids and whatnot, I don't think they limited the other aspects of the class to make that effective. Like maybe the Moon Druid's thing is that it does have that extra HP pool, and then Wild Shape for the rest of the subclasses don't. I could see that being a little bit better, but yeah, having these extra HP pools to just keep like reusing and face checking problems with this HP because they know they're going to get it back is just I don't get it. Never made sense to me. So getting rid of that, I'm all behind. And I know everyone that plays a druid is gonna hate it, but I'll be sitting here in absolute bliss, being able to smite down these fucking direwolf druids. So.
We maybe should give the disclaimer here that you're running a game with a moon druid in it whom you
Mhm.
hate. So let's
I
just
I don't hate it, but it
I
is
outed
it's
you.
it's so optimized that it's hard to actually play the game. And so yeah, currently I think my frustration with Moon Druids is at its highest, but I've always had this issue with it whenever I've like talked to players who want to bring one or so on and so forth. So yeah.
It's basically a nat will naturally cast polymorph
Hmm.
because that's exactly how polymorph works.
Hmm.
And that does seem like there's room for tailoring it more to the druid's flavor and situation. I wonder if they're again just spitballing game design here. Uh, Make it add temp HP
Hmm.
when you wild shape.
Or you take like half the damage for every damage point it takes, something. But yeah, like the best example I have that just doesn't connect in my mind is in my second game. Our Moon Druid went out, got attacked, was shot, stabbed, harassed, ran back to camp, transformed back in his normal form, and he's fine. He's perfectly fine after being like nearly killed. And it's just like, that hurts my brain. That does not compute. So yeah, I've always had an issue with it.
It for the class that is so focused on nature, it doesn't feel natural. It doesn't feel like, a primal force being tapped into. It's
Mhm,
just a wizard did it,
mhm.
except a druid did it.
Yeah. I think my biggest overall point across this whole video, and I'm probably coming off as like the most anti-druid person in the world, which is not the case. I cannot stand wild shape. I think my overall point is I wish wild shape was not 95% of what a druid was. And that very much feels like it is right now, and that's why moon druid is like probably the most picked subclass. I would bet money on it. So I would like the druid to be a druid again. That
It
is my,
is
yeah.
it is a class that, from the outside looking in, again, from my perspective, it does seem like a class which there's a right way to play. Like
Mhm.
there's an accepted meta, um, and if you play a druid against that type, then people are going to be like, "What are you doing? Why?
Mhm.
That's You did it wrong. You're playing the wrong druid."
Mhm. I will, because I've been singing the praises of the one D&D. I will throw out there that I'm not really even planning on playing one D&D unless it comes out and everyone's like, "This is the best game ever. There is absolutely no wrong with it," which doubt that will be the case. I'm probably gonna keep playing 5e until like I'm done doing TTRPGs in general. But I do enjoy the direction they are heading. I would agree with this direction generally because I do think the Druid is pretty insane where it is. But yeah, I'm not like trying to convince anybody that whatever this turns into is going to be a better version of D&D. I just think that what they're trying to do now is pretty cool and maybe we could pull some of that back into 5e, do some home brewing so I can ruin everyone's druiding dreams.
Retrofit the 1D&D stuff to
Well,
5e.
supposedly one D&D is gonna work with 5e. Won't even get started on that rabbit hole again, but yeah.
That Yeah, the adventures they've published can be played
Mhm.
with 1D&D characters, perhaps.
There was I was watching a few different videos on this leading up to this conversation, and there was kind of like it was always like tack on kind of afterthought thing of the early levels of a druid are kind of a little bit different because now you get wild shape at third level instead of second level, and people always argued that if you're a druid, you should probably pick your path at first level, but that's more of a balancing thing, so on and so forth, etc., etc. With one D&D making the shift or appearing to make the shift towards your character's class being less defining and then feats being a larger part of your background and who you are and how you work mechanically, I think it would be interesting to push like the bigger shift of the classes later and then letting the feats kind of dictate what an early character looks like. That's an interesting concept in my mind. And applying that to the druid, that could be pretty interesting where you have like almost kind of like an acolyte or someone who's learning the ropes or like on their path to be in tune with nature, and you could easily flavor that with whatever feats they come out with, and then finally when you like culminate with your god or you feel like you've proved yourself, that's when like I have bestowed you with the wild shape of whatever, etc., or these bigger events or powers you can lean on. I like that. I think it'd be interesting, but that's very much not how 5e is set up right now.
Well, if you want to flame Nathan for his opinion on druids,
Have that to me. I will die
again,
on this hill.
do so down below. And otherwise, I don't think I've got anything else.
I will preempt. If any of your comments are, well, if you think druids are bad, what about yes, that is also broken. Whatever you're going to put in that blank, I agree with you. But druids are, I would not say are perfect by any means. But yeah, play the game you want to play. Enjoy whatever character you want to build. I don't dictate your table. I just make spicy takes on the internet.
For now,
Yeah, until I'm beaten down.
we're gonna no, we're gonna take your table over. We don't dictate your table yet.
We'll start the Natural 2 auditing club.
Just you wait. Become president of TTRPGs, and then you're gonna see.
We'll start the open Natural 2 license.
No, no, no. It's the closed. It's the
Yeah.
buttoned up and bolted down license. If you even look at it, you owe us
Mm-hmm.
$500,000.
No, if you even listen to the video, you owe us money. Our thoughts and our opinions. No,
So look forward to that, and keep an eye on this space for more videos.
no. If you're looking for maps, I make maps. There'll be a link to the store below. They are all free. Have at them, use them, enjoy them, modify them, or put them up on the wall and throw darts at them if you hate my opinions. Do whatever you like. But that's all I have.
Until next time.
Have a good one.